You're listening to Kill Cliff's Hazard Ground podcast, with service members from across the military sharing their stories of combat and survival. And now, here's your host, Mark Zinno.
Welcome into the Hazard Ground podcast. As always, we appreciate you joining us each and every week. Before we get to this week's guest, who is a self-suggestion through our website, which we always love, somebody who wants to tell their story. We're grateful for those fans of the show who want to do that. First, a few words of normal homework assignments for you guys. Follow us on all the social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hazard Ground Podcast. Please leave some more Apple reviews. Doesn't have to be a lengthy review. Give us 5 stars. Tell us why you love the show. That'll continue to help us grow this Hazard Ground community and get more and more people involved in on everything that we're doing here. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch all of our episodes as well. Just go to YouTube, look for Hazard Ground, and click subscribe. We certainly appreciate you guys following us there as well. Download the Kill Cliff TV app. You can get all of our episodes there as well. It's completely free. And don't forget to go to killcliff.com and get yourself some Kill Cliff, including their CBD products, Killer Cliff Sickle right here. A personal fan of all of Kill Cliff's products, clean energy drinks. I use their pre-workout, their post-workout. Just a fantastic product, and a company founded by a former Navy SEAL. A lot of their proceeds go to benefit the Navy SEAL Foundation, and certainly a company you need to check out, especially if you are into fitness and or working out and staying physically fit. Again, killcliff.com. All right, before we get on to this week's episode, again, just one more reminder about our promotion with Amazon. Make sure you go to our website, hazardground.com. Click on the Amazon button at the bottom of the homepage or into the sponsors tab, and it'll redirect you right to Amazon. You can do all of your normal Amazon shopping, and we get a percentage of what you guys spend, and then we donate a percentage back to some of the great charities and organizations you've heard featured here on the Hazard Ground. Works the same from your smartphone. Very simple, very convenient. If you go to hazardground.com, it'll redirect you to the app, and it'll take, it takes you right through the app. All your credit card information is saved. So it's very simple, very convenient, and an easy way to help out veterans right from the comfort of your own home or on your smartphone. All right, this week's guest, as I mentioned earlier, is a self-suggestion. Somebody who wrote into our website and wanted to share their story. And that's just so amazing. We're so grateful to people who want to do that, mostly because, as we've always said, everybody's story has value, and it is important to this big pie that we call the military. So it doesn't matter what you did or where you went or how long you stayed in the military, your story is important. He is a 3.5-year member of the United States Army with 1 deployment to Iraq, where he was a Cav Scout. And he also is somebody who wants to share the story of the great NCOs that he worked with. He's a retired specialist, and he is Bradley Walker joining us here on the Hazard Ground. Brad, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so a sort of unique story for you. And again, thank you so much for reaching out, because I think it's so important. We were talking before we started recording how you say that it's easy to forget a lot of this stuff, and it's easy that people forget about, what people did and the sacrifices that they made. And this is a great way for you to kind of revive those, but also make sure they sort of are etched in history here. So again, we appreciate you being willing to tell your story.
Thank you, sir.
All right. For you, somebody who didn't come from a military family, how'd you end up in the Army and why?
Well, I played football for 8 years, and growing up, I really liked a lot of military history. Particularly, I was fascinated with the Vietnam War. There was just something about it that just piqued my interest, and I watched a lot of the History Channel on Saturdays when I didn't have football practice. And so I was a little aware of, military history and what the military does and all that, but never had a family member that actually served a day in the military. So I get to the end of my football life, and I didn't have any plans. I was hanging out with the wrong crowd. All I knew was that I needed to get off the streets. I needed to get some structure. I needed to get some discipline, and I needed to get out of my hometown, and there were really no options for me. So I kind of stumbled my way into the Army, really. I talked to a Marine recruiter first, and he said, I can get you out of here in 6 months. And Staff Sergeant Ibanez, he came out of the Army recruiting office, said, "What did he say?" And he said, he can get me out of here in 6 months. He said, "I can get you out of here in 3. At the time, I was like, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah." So yeah, I stumbled into it.
Yeah, I always love the competition recruiting stories, right? They're always a lot of fun. Now, you're a young kid. You were 10 years old when 9/11 happened. Was there anything about that sort of crystallized any idea of military service, or you thought the exact opposite?
Well, um, I remember that day. That day was etched in my mind. It was almost like I didn't really understand what was happening at the time. Hindsight's always 2020. We went to school that day. I think I was in fourth grade, and the teachers were they were all buzzing. They were all, talking, what's going on, this, that, and the other. And one of them wheels a TV in to the classroom, and we didn't switch classes until about noon. And we got to watch the aftermath of what had happened. And some of the teachers would come into the room and talk, and it was it was a chaotic day. And I got home, and the name Bin Laden was really everywhere. But I was a young kid. I was starting football that year, and it was just all really. It didn't really mean much to me at the time until I grew up and I understood exactly what had happened.
So, as a young kid who enters into the Army, did you know what you want to do in the Army, or you just were willing to do whatever they told you to do?
I originally started the route of military police. And honestly speaking, it was a 5-year contract. And I said, man, I really want to know if I can make it in this man's army. So let me do a 3-year contract. And he said, well, I don't really have any available slots, but Cavalry Scout. And I said, what's a Cav Scout? And he showed me the video, guys in ghillie suits, dirt bikes, cool stuff, sitting in sniper hides, all the stuff that you really never get to do. And it sold me. I was like, man, reconnaissance, that's pretty important. I know that from military history. Reconnaissance really can dictate a battlefield. So yeah, why not? I'll be a scout.
But did you exactly know, that what a scout did, or you just had no idea until you saw the video?
I had no idea until I saw the video. No idea. I knew that, in like military movies, they always say, hey, scouts reported this and scouts. So I know the layman's terms of being a scout, but I didn't know, what the Army's version of a scout was.
Okay, so you're off to basic training where?
Fort Knox, Kentucky.
Okay, not too far from home, right?
Not very far. It was my first time on a plane.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
I actually had my first cigarette outside the airport while everybody else just started smoking cigarettes. I guess there were some people that something had happened to them, so they were going back into one station unit training. We were all OSUT guys. We were all going to the same unit, and they started smoking. And I went over there. I was like, man, can I have one of those, please? Because I was scared. I was like, man, what did I get myself into? I'd signed that paper, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to be in the Army. And then the time came, and I'm like, oh, man. I'm not going to say cold feet, but I was, I had a lot of butterflies in my stomach about that.
Did you do any reading on basic training ahead of time, or did you just walk into it blind?
No, I did some reading, and there were some people like in my circle of friends. My buddy, all red childhood friend, best friend, he had went into the Navy, and he told me boot camp is not like it is on TV. It's not like they show you on YouTube. When the camera's on around, they're going to make sure that you're disciplined. They're going to make sure, yada, yada, yada. So I was like, all right, man. And my dad was a pretty hard-nosed guy, so I took a lot of it for granted. I was like, well, if I can handle him, surely I can handle a drill sergeant. And I went into it with a lot of assumptions of what a soldier does.
Yeah, certainly misplaced. My mother's 4'11" and Italian and yells and throws shoes, but even advanced camp for me was a little bit of a culture shock at how much they yelled at you. So not like they tell you it's going to be at home at all. So when you get on ground, are you just sort of like overwhelmed by everything that's going on?
Oh, I'm shell shocked. I could not believe what was, now you're talking about my first day, ground zero basic OSUT or like reception?
No, like your first day as soon as you get there. I mean, are they yelling at you? Are they nice to start or?
It was pretty much the drill instructors, sergeants. They were, they were kind of, I didn't know at the time, but they were there to basically relax, just kind of get these new recruits where they need to go and, get them kind of ready, kind of disciplined into the Army mindset and the Army groove before they went downrange to go to day zero and go through the OSUT. And the night I got there, it was about 2 a.m. in the morning. And this is the first time I realized, like, all right, this is really basic training. Everybody else, the drill sergeant said, empty your bags. And I was assuming, again, always assumptions, I assumed surely he doesn't mean my change of clothes. And he sees me, I'm at parade rest. He can see me through the platoon line. He comes back there on the second row and he looks me in the eye and he says, "Why isn't your bag empty?" And I was dumb enough to try and respond to him. And he just said, "Empty your damn bag," at the top of his lungs. And his eyes scared me. And that was when I snapped to him, was like, all right, I'm in the Army. I don't have any control over this situation. I'm government property. I got to do what they say, all this, that, and the other. I got to grow up right now.
Yeah. Welcome to the Army. Then get me to OSUT and what happens there?
Day zero, I came in at about 2:20 and Staff Sergeant Ibanez, he was like, "Don't worry about it. They're going to get you down to fighting shape. Don't worry about it, man." And so I get there and one of my platoon drill sergeants, Drill Sergeant Charney, this was in about 2 minutes of us holding the bag over our head. And I thought I was pretty strong. I was starting to struggle. And he comes over and he says, "If you don't hold that bag up over your head, I'm going to destroy your soul." And the brim of his drill sergeant hat was touching the brim of my PC cap. And I remember that just sent such a chill down my spine. And it let me know, like, man, your parents aren't here. They're yours. You're theirs. It's them or the highway. It was a crazy wake up call. Everything was so chaotic. They spread everybody's stuff on the ground, kicked it around. I mean, it was crazy from a guy that came from like an old school, I wouldn't say undisciplined, but, kind of loose on the rules to that within that instant, having to conform to that. It was like walking on the moon for the first time. It's crazy.
Did you think you'd made a mistake?
Oh, yes. Yes. I was like, what in the hell did I just do with 3 years of my life? Is this what it's going to be like? Is this how the Army is going to be? I thought I had made a huge mistake at the time.
Was there a point in basic where that logic had flipped, or did it take until you had gotten later on down the road?
No, it was about day 3. And I had, I'm going to keep it real. I had not taken a deuce in 3 days, and that had never happened to me.
So you were literally scared shitless.
Yes. And that's what I thought I was. I was like, man,
I can no longer go to the bathroom. I'm so scared. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're sitting in formation, and Drill Sergeant Charney, which for 3 days now, I'm thinking this man was built in General George S. Patton's lab of the perfect drill sergeant with old blood and guts. I mean, he was my worst nightmare for 3 days. Every chance he got, or him or Drill Sergeant Kreitz got to smoke me, they did. And I thought they enjoyed it. They probably did. But he asked us in formation. He was like, "All right, warriors, who here has not taken a shit in 3 days?" And I was one of the ones that raised my hand. He's like, "Do not be alarmed. Your body is burning calories at, I forgot the word. I think he said at a cataclysmic rate. And you're, it's burning it faster than you can even put it out." So he said, if you're overweight, then chances are that's you. And yeah, I was overweight. So that made sense to me.
Well, I guess it was a relief that the plumbing still worked, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They got to pay that plumber a little extra.
When did you finally get to relieve yourself?
Well, if you're curious, about day 5.
Okay.
But I know some guys, if you want to keep it personal, I know a guy with 9 days under his belt.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah. But he was, he had lost. Oh, man. I think he lost. He didn't even look like him. I mean, he had lost 90 pounds, maybe 80 pounds. And I think it was like 17 or 18 weeks of OSUT. He had lost a lot of weight.
What was the point in time that you just started to feel a little bit more comfortable while you were in basic?
It was about 3 weeks in.
I thought you were going to say graduation. Yeah, graduation is when I finally started to feel comfortable.
Yeah, really. But it was about 3 weeks in, and it was after the whole, because the first 3 weeks they are literally breaking you down so they can build you right back up into what they want you to be. It's all by design, and the light bulbs hit when you get to the next point, like the next phase, as they call it. They got the white phase, red phase. Of course, I'm getting that jacked up. But about 3 weeks in, I was like, man, for some reason, I'm starting to get like really passionate. I'm starting to understand like this, what being a soldier is. Being a soldier is about being tough, about being hard nosed, about, taking pride in yourself and taking what, other, the average person can't. And really, and when we started learning about what the Cav does and Cavalry Scouts do, I started realizing like, all right, this is pretty cool. This is pretty cool because, there are a lot of jobs out there where you want to go bang, bang, you want to blow some stuff up. But I got fascinated with the fact that a drill sergeant said, if you ever have to fire your rifle in a conventional war as a cavalry scout, you have failed your job. Your job is on a radio, reporting enemy movement all the time, tracking them, whatever. So, yeah, I started to become almost enamored in it after about 3 weeks.
Pretty good. So once basic is over, are you headed to AIT next, I assume?
No, we had the same drill sergeants the entire 17 to 18 weeks.
Okay, so they did it all in one shot for you?
Sir?
They did it all in one shot?
Yes, sir.
Interesting.
Yeah, and, they were all scouts, too, so they all had the same MOS as us. And, it was... like I said, I didn't even know they'd seen us as human beings until we got to the end of it. And they just kind of like, it was the night before we were going to meet our parents, have the big ceremony and go home. And that's when they started like, all right, you've made it through this. I can treat you like a soldier now. You're about to go to your unit. And Drill Sergeant Charney, which was a thorn in my side for about 9 weeks. After the other 8 weeks, I think it was 8 or 9 weeks, he had started talking about the real Army. He said, when you get to the real Army, this is all going to be a big light bulb for you. Everything you learn here, all that you've been through, when you get to the real Army, you're going to understand why the method to the madness of why we did, why we are the way we are, because you're going to understand the chances are you're going to go down range. So, yeah.
Does that light bulb actually go on for you, or you kind of disagree with his assessment?
Oh, it came on for me. It really did. After about a week in the unit, because I was a very shy guy. I was a funny guy, but I was very shy until I got comfortable around you. So
you mentioned that he had said you guys are going to go down range. When you had signed up, clearly you're in a post 9/11 world. I mean, you had to know when you were signing up that this was a high probability, correct?
Yes. And in a way, I had lied to my father because my father was extremely nervous about me. Boy, you don't need to be going fight no damn war in the army, like all of this. He was more peace, love, prosperity, even though he was a bodybuilder and hard nosed. Like conflict was kind of not our forte.
Right.
So I had lied to him and told him I was going to be an 88 Micah truck driver. And, I wasn't going to be on the front lines or anywhere near it. And so I kind of believed that in a way until I'd understood, until they had said, all right, here goes your papers for Cavalry Scout training. So yeah.
So when you get to your unit, which is where, by the way, Fort Hood, right?
Fort Hood, Texas.
Yeah, I spent some time there. And you went to the first Cav, right?
Yes, sir.
Good old Bucky. I had an old first sergeant who referred to the horse on the logo as Bucky. I don't know why. It just always stuck with me. Stuff lieutenants remember. Stuff we forget, but that was what I remembered. Anyway, so clearly you're going to one of the biggest Cav units in all the military. So this is what they live, breathe, and die for. Do you start to get a certain level of comfort, like with the military overall, once you get there?
Yes, I started. Well, let me back up just a little bit. When I had got done with the one station unit training, and maybe it's because I'm only 5'6", I don't know, but for some reason I had felt like I was almost indestructible. Like I was like, all right, I'm a cool guy. I'm a Cav Scout. Like I was all gassed up in my head. And I get to the unit, and one of the first things I noticed is the guy that came to the airport to pick me up was a specialist. And he had a combat patch. And that was something I hadn't seen since one station unit training. I'd had some leave, 10 days to see my family. And that was like, oh, like I was seeing staff sergeants, sergeant first classes, captains, first lieutenants, they all had combat patches. That was my first time seeing a specialist with a combat patch. And it was like, all right, I'm the fish out of water now, and I need to shut up and absorb as much as I can for as long as they'll let me. And because eventually they're going to cut me loose.
And do you feel like fitting in at the unit was easy?
Yes. I thought, because I'm from South Carolina, I thought that I was going to be picked on a lot, but actually I was known as the Platoon Clown. I was the comedian. I did a lot of funny stuff. I tried to keep everybody's spirits high, keep everybody laughing.
Yeah, people from South Carolina don't get laughed at that much. I'll never forget. I had a kid in my platoon when I arrived at Fort Hood. He was from Kentucky, and his first name was LD, just the letters LD. They didn't stand for anything.
LD.
They didn't. There was no initials. It was just LD. And that was his name. And he got destroyed by everybody for having a name like LD. So you don't have to you don't have to be from South Carolina to be the one that gets made fun of.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you got an accent, you better clean up your radio talk, and you better have thick skin, because chances are somebody's gonna add some twang on it or whatever, and they're not. It's not anything personal.
Right.
It's kind of a compliment.
So when you finish with OSA and everything, and you get to Fort Hood when?
I get to Fort Hood on September 16th, 2010. I had 10 days, or actually 11. I had 11 days of off time, and then I had to report to my unit.
Now, you don't deploy for basically about another 10 months or so. So are you hearing anything about deployment when you get there?
I was in the 1st Squadron, 7th Cavalry, 1st Brigade Combat Team. And one of the things that, not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but one of the things that was, notorious in my unit and maybe surrounding units was orders were always kind of late. You just expected and assumed. It was a unit that deployed a lot to Iraq, had a lot of business dealings in Iraq. So all the NCOs, they've been there, they've done that. These are combat hardened guys. They're like, look, 9 times out of 10, we're going to Iraq. So that's what we're going to train for. We're training under the assumption that we're going to Iraq. And they were extremely correct. And of course, there were the rumblings, there were the whispers in the hallways of, yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen a copy of the orders and it says we're going to Iraq, da, 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 da. So I was like, all right, Iraq it is. Okay.
Did you tell your parents?
No, I did not tell my parents until probably about March, April of the following year, before I realized that I was getting leave. I was getting 18 days of leave before he deployed. So I was like, all right, I'm going to wait about 2 or 3 months before. I really don't want to. The less time that they had to worry about it, the better in my mind. Of course, I was young at the time. And so I told them about March, April.
So when you start training up for the deployment and everything, can you really get a sense of, all the stuff you liked about being a Cav Scout, and that's, all starting to happen as you do train up? I mean, is it all starting to come together for you?
Yes. It was a bit mixed, because for about my first 4 or 5 months there, we were doing a lot of conventional force on force training, Bradley gunneries, maneuvers, stuff like that. I was in a mechanized unit, so we were doing Bradley movements and stuff like that. And the Humvee guys, they would do their gunneries and stuff like that. And we would practice dismounted operations, and every now and again. And we had an NTC rotation coming up in March, and we started gearing up for that in about January, February. We started packing everything up and going to Fort Irwin, California, and we got about 3 or 4 weeks of pretty good training there. It was, they call it the box, and we really had. That was really my first time it started clicking to me like, all right, you're about to go to Iraq. This is extremely serious. This is extremely important. You got to take everything seriously. You've got to pay attention to detail all the time because lives are going to depend on it. That was when it really hit home for me, when we started practicing scenarios at NTC and was like, this could be real life. And you got to be ready when your number's called.
So when you guys leave for Iraq, what do you know about the mission of what you're doing when you get there?
Everything was kind of in flux, really. At the time, there was, politicians were doing their thing. There was, all right, you guys need to leave Iraq by this time, but there were still rumblings that we might get more time. There might be a residual force. There might be, they might keep 10,000. They might keep training assist. There was a lot of stuff out there. And so we were training. We knew that our job was going to be to get supplies, get, whatever we needed, any U.S. equipment that we want to take with us. We knew that our job was going to be mainly to convoy escort that north to south to Kuwait so it can be offloaded and sent back to U.S. or wherever they want to deploy the assets.
Yeah, I mean, I was on ground. I got there in February of 2011, so we were there at the same time.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I remember, I always told people, I said, I told my entire unit, I said, guys, we're coming to Iraq to leave. That's the mission. Leave, right? Like it just never made sense because why would you bring more units in? When are you trying to get everybody out? But, Washington, the Department of Defense and the Army and all their infinite wisdom said this is the way we're going to do it. And so that's how it was done. But, the whole mission of leaving was a lot more complex and complicated than anybody gave it credit for.
Yes. And, I was one that I like to follow the news. That's kind of how it steered me into the military in the first place, was following the news, seeing these guys, going out there, doing their job every day, just some of the baddest MFers on the planet, just America's best. And I was like, man, I want to see if I can do that. I definitely want to see if I can do that. So, I paid a lot of attention to the news and what was going on. And one of the things that was popping out to me about that time frame was that there was a major uptick in basically, I guess you could call it sectarian violence in the country. There was, from January to February to March, it seemed like there was always one big suicide bombing every month. And it was, that name kept popping up, ISIS of Iraq, IS of Iraq. And I was like, man, maybe this is not going to be the cakewalk that I thought it was going to be, like some kind of camping trip or whatever. Like, this is going to be like they're still trying to actively kill U.S. personnel. So have your head on the swivel.
No, 100%. And again, I mean, there was, and the other part of the uptick in violence at that point in time is because they had known that everybody in Iraq was in a defensive posture. We weren't really doing there were very limited offensive kinetic operations going on at that point in time.
Very extremely limited. I think one of the only kinetic operations, big operations for that year was the Tikrit assault. And I only really heard about that because our base was stationed near Tikrit, and we ran a lot of convoy escort and PSD out of Tikrit. So that was one of the things I had heard. But I got there in early July. This was right after they had five soldiers, I believe, killed in a rocket attack all at once. So I mean, things were tense, but the NCOs did a great job. Did a great, phenomenal job of keeping everybody calm. And just to back up here, I know I just plowed over this. To the NCOs, when I got to the unit, I thought it was going to be more screaming, yelling, smoking the crap out of me, banging my head around, a lot of that stuff. And one of the things I noticed was that the NCOs were like, look, we ain't got time for all that. We got time to train you. We got to bring you in. You understand that we're your leaders and you got to respect us. You understand that. But we're going to get a little close because you got to be able to trust me. I got to be able to trust you. We got to believe in each other because when we're over there, we're all we're going to have. So they wanted to make sure that we were getting close, and they wanted to take us under their wing. It wasn't these new guys this, these new guys that some of these movies portray. It was, hey, I care about you. I want to see you go home, and I want to give you every bit of training, every bit of advice, every bit of information I can so that you can get home to your family. And that's why I'm so appreciative of those NCOs, because those were guys that have been there 2-3 deployments. Those were guys from OIF 1, guys from the Operation Anaconda were in the unit. I mean, there were guys that just had their mettle tested at the highest level. And I just don't think they get the respect they deserve. I think that those guys deserve a lot more recognition, a lot more respect. They probably deserve a lot more pay for what they got to put up with and what they got to do. Because, there are a lot of guys. I mean, their job is also, once you get to your unit, they got to make sure you're training, absorbing, and learning. And if you're not, then they got to make sure that, you're not anywhere near somewhere where you can screw up the unit effectiveness. So, I mean, they got a lot of jobs and more respect to them. I had some great NCOs.
No, well said. Take me through a typical Cav Scout mission for you in Iraq during the deployment.
Okay. We would wake up, I would say we would wake up at about midnight. Of course, we get the mission briefing the day before I'd say about noon, maybe. We'd go through an op briefing. Hey, we're taking this many. We knew how many trucks we would have to escort. So, hey, we're taking 50 of these KBR trucks. We're taking them from Fob Kalsu to Fob Taji or Fob Spiker to Fob Taji. And it's going to probably estimate to take this long. The roads are black, red, whatever the condition of the roads are. And, any IED, any attacks against U.S. or Iraqi troops, checkpoints, anything like that was briefed in the past 24 to 48 hours. And also, we would also have, in our mind, because we had wound up driving on a lot of these streets a lot. And so it kind of becomes like you kind of understand your surroundings after a certain amount of time. So that was mainly the mission briefing right there. And then so they give us some time to chill. They give us some time, you can go work out, you can go get chow, whatever you want to do, call your family if the Wi-Fi is up or the phones are working, or, do whatever you do. Do your dwell time, your relax time. But you better be at the trucks at midnight at this time and not, you actually better be there. They tell you to be there at 0:30. You better be there at 00. You better be there on the dot, ready to go. And so we would go into that. We'd PMCS our vehicles, make sure they're ready to go over our packing lists, weapons checks, systems checks, all that kind of stuff. And then we would have a briefing again, kind of like get the spirit up. Let's get the juices flowing. Let's get our head on a swivel and understand what we got to do. And then we load up and we get ready for SP.
Were there times where you guys ran into enemy contact?
A few times. One time in particular, I was the platoon sergeant's vehicle, the senior scout vehicle. We kind of had some bouncing NCOs and stuff, so we had some guys covered down. But our senior scout was also the platoon sergeant, and I was his driver. I was in the middle of a convoy escort, and we got about 7 on a big load. We got about 7 or 8 trucks, 53-foot trailer trucks in between us all. And some insurgent decided to take a couple pop shots at the rear vehicle as they were passing by. And us and an additional gun truck had to go, we had to go like 400 meters back to get to the truck, and they were driving up towards us. So they had intersected us, and they had drove straight into it was fob Taji, and they drove straight into the fob. And it was just all like, the whole time I had turned around and I knew that we were going towards them. I was like, all right, this is it. This is where we test our mettle and all this. And they intersected us, and I was like, oh, like this is it. Like, all right. So they go inside, because the ROE at the time was, unless your vehicle is disabled, you push through that. You're not really, you don't have the initiative to make contact unless you have positive identification, unless you can basically smell the dude shooting the rifle. I mean, that's basically what I joked about. It was basically, when they got shot at, they knew their job was to push ahead. Gun trucks were on the way to get them. And I believe the other gun truck went to the back of the convoy, secured the back of the convoy, and we escorted that truck into fob Taji. I didn't see what had happened. We'd stayed there at the entrance to Taji, just kind of like a show of force, keeping a presence out there until the threat was either identified or went away or whatever. That was really outside the wire. That was like one of the closest incidents. The main threat was really rockets and mortars that were coming into the base. I was at Joint Base Balad, and it was a pretty big installation. So there were a lot of good targets, for mortars and rockets and whatever they could throw at us. And I want to add something here. The other platoons, blue platoon and white platoon, I don't know if we had like I don't know if we just had luck, if it was an act of God or whatever, but it just seemed like we always missed trouble. And one thing that one of my senior NCOs, platoon sergeant, always emphasized, he said, look, these people want us gone. They want us out of here. You treat them with respect. You look like you don't, you're the one not to be fucked with. Their chances are they're going to leave you alone. If you go out there, you start flipping people off, you start honking your horn, cutting cars off, all that stuff, you're asking for trouble. Just do your job. I'm not going to say politely, but do your job in a dignified fashion. And, that was kind of the thing on the ground. If you look like you don't want to be messed with and you're doing your job, chances are you're not going to be messed with. So that was a key point of emphasis.
You mentioned stuff inside the wire. Did something happen to somebody inside the wire in a rocket attack or a mortar attack?
Yeah, I mean, the Iraqi army, Iraqi police, they were, those mortar and rocket attacks. This was such a big installation, and we were all the way inside of it. We were in the middle of it. So they were the ones taking all the casualties, the Iraqi army and the Iraqi police. And we would see the fire trucks and the ambulances. The closest I ever got to anything was I was on the way to a chow hall, and there was a couple staff sergeants in front of me, and it was me and a friend Bonstetter, and a mortar came in. Like it was pretty close. It was about 250, maybe 300 meters away. You could see the little plume in the distance. And then you heard it. And we had hit the ground, and the staff sergeant hit the ground too. And I was sitting there, and me and Bonstetter were looking at each other, scared shitless. And the two NCOs had looked at each other and just gave each other this little, kind of laugh. And they just got up and was like, "Hey, let's go to the chow hall." And I was just sitting there like, "Man, that was close." Of course, my version of close at the time. But yeah, that was really the closest anything's ever happened to me. There was a couple wire breaches towards the end of our stay because I guess the Iraqis knew that a lot of our unit had, started moving down. We were closing down that base, so we were one of 3 of the last units there, and there was a couple wire breaches. I don't know if anything ever came to fruition. Could have been a lot of things.
So this deployment goes on, and by the way, the main effort had all closed up shop by December of 2011, but you guys had stayed on past that. Why?
Well, we were on the border of Kuwait.
Okay.
And our job, 1-7's job at the time, was QRF for any convoy that was coming from Iraq to Kuwait that was in trouble.
Got it.
Our lieutenant colonel was like, "Hey, we're their 911." So, if you take that how you will.
So you guys had pulled out of Iraq and were waiting at the Kuwait border to finish out the rest of the deployment.
Yes. Well, at the time, there was a post on Facebook that was like, "Hey, man, listen, Gary Owen, hope you didn't turn out the lights. We're going home and we'll be home before Christmas, whatever." So we got all excited. And a lot of the senior NCOs were like, "Man, look, I don't know who put that on there, but that is not true. They got us for a year. They're going to use us somewhere." And so I was naive, and I got my hopes up. I'm going home 6 months. I got my little taste of deployment, got my little taste of Iraq. I'm going home. No, you're going to go sit in Kuwait and be QRF and train and
you're going to go sit in Kuwait and be completely miserable is what they should have said.
Yes, a good old Camp Buehring.
Yes. One of the worst places on earth.
Hey, I didn't want to say it, but yeah, that was my first time that I had said, "You know what?" The next day we had set up, we didn't have anything set up when we got to those tents, and we had set up 50-man tents. It was 2 platoons, scout platoons, about 20, 25 guys. So it was 48 to 50 guys in a tent. We had to set up all those racks. And I remember just saying, I was like, "Dude, I would love to be back at Joint Base Balad. It was sweet. The Air Force was cooking us marinated chicken breasts. Yep. You had steak and surf and turf and all this." I was like, "Man, we're in Kuwait now, not even in a combat zone. And this is horrible. There's nothing to do here but train." It's crazy.
That and go to the gym. I mean,
yeah, it gets swole.
It's amazing to me still. We are now going on, 30 plus years of being in Kuwait on annual 1-year rotations. It's the worst place on earth, the worst military summit you can have. We haven't figured out a way to stop doing it yet. Go figure.
And it seems like if you're a mechanized unit, they got your number, because I think we replaced a unit from 3rd ID, mechanized unit, and then there was a unit from 3rd ID that was coming to replace us. So it was kind of like, I guess they like to, keep a mechanized unit there just to run them around and train them.
Well, you got nothing but desert and open land, and we'll run tanks over
yeah,
so
it's perfect place
all the space in the world. All right, so I assume that the rest of that deployment finishes out pretty mundane and simple on the way out?
Yeah, we were watching the stuff that was going on in Afghanistan, and they just wanted us to, basically the whole time we were there in Kuwait, it was to keep a heightened alert and just train for whatever scenario may come our way. We did a little bit of everything. We got to work with, we got to do some Larp training. We did a Larp mission that was like an overnight, it's like about 16, 18-hour mission, I think. And it was pretty cool, using your night vision, walking through the desert, trying to find your way around. That was pretty cool. But it was a lot of training for, trying to be the jack of all trades for whatever, because we didn't know what was coming down the pipe. So we just wanted to stay ready for everything.
So when you finally get the call that you guys are going home, thoughts, reaction, feeling, like, was it tough to believe? You think they were going to extend you? How did that all go down?
I felt like the whole time I was sitting there in Kuwait, just looking at, Iraq, figuratively looking at Iraq, just like, all right, when's this thing going to go wrong? When's this going to go wrong? Because I know that, not trying to be mean, but I know that a lot of the Iraqi soldiers and policemen that I seen, I don't think that, I didn't think that they had necessarily like wanted to fight. I think a lot of them were there for a paycheck at the time. And so I was a bit worried. I was like, man, and our interpreter was still over there, Alex. He was still trying to get his visa. He didn't get his visa until I think it was maybe late 2013 or 2014. So, I was thinking about him when I got back home. I was like, damn, he's helped us out, and he's helped a military unit out before that. And I'm sure before that. And, I'm ready for him to get over here and make sure that he gets the recognition he deserved, because he was awesome.
So we finally get back home. Talk to me about that. Like, do you know at that point in time that you want to be done with the Army?
I did not. I was married at the time, and I didn't really know. I didn't really know what the future had held for me. As soon as I got back, when I got back home, I was really decompressing, and I'd made a lot of bonds with a lot of good people, and we just went through that together, and it was kind of like I just want. I'm sure you can relate. You just want to be around those guys. You want to hang with those guys. They're your brothers. But once after that wore off, I realized that, all right, we just drew down Iraq. Word on the street, and it kind of already started happening around the time I was getting out, was that Afghanistan, the combat mission over there was done. And, I really signed up to, test my mettle and see if I could make it, see if I can hack it and see if I can perform my job. And, I was there for mainly the action, and I realized there wasn't going to be any more action. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to take my cards while I got them, and I'm going to get out.
Did you feel any reservations about that decision?
When ISIS had full-fledged in 2014, I definitely rethought about that. I was like, man, like, here we go. It's here now. And U.S. troops there are sent for advise and assist. But at the time, I was like, all right, I think this may turn into, they may have to send combat troops over there to push ISIS, out of some of those cities. Because at the time, the Iraqi army and the Iraqi police, they were kind of, they were getting hit pretty hard. And that really ended when the Iraqi army, specifically Iraq's Gold Division, the really crack Special Operations Division, when they started getting their victories. And I was like, all right, so the people of Iraq are going to, they're pretty much telling us this is, we'll take it from here. This is our fight to win. And so I was like, all right, well, I think it's officially over. And yeah, I mean, that's really what I joined the Army for. I was naive, and I was like, I want to go deploy. I want to go deploy to Iraq. I want to go deploy to Afghanistan. And I got humbled, of course.
In what way?
Yeah. Yeah.
No, in what way did you get humbled, though?
Well, I knew that, first of all, I was not invincible. I knew that I could, I could be killed. I could die just as easily as anybody else. I knew that I wasn't the baddest man on the planet. There was somebody else that was badder than me. Those were the real main things. It was humbling in the fact that no matter what happens to you, like these IEDs, these EFPs, these rockets, these mortars, they don't have anybody's name on them in particular. They're not assigned to anybody. They could go to anybody at any time. And that was a pretty humbling experience. And during training, some training exercises, I would mess up and I would get humbled really quick by a sergeant, and they would let me know really quick, this is where you are. This is what I need you to do. And I need you to do it to the best of your ability.
Did anybody try to keep you in, talk you into staying, or no?
Yes. There was,
I mean,
there
other
were a
than the
few
retention
people.
NCO, I mean, just like your friends and buddies in the squad or
Oh,
anything like
yes.
that.
Yes. Oh, yes. And I mean, it sounded good at the time. It really did, because that at that time I was so young that was really all I knew was Army life. And I was scared. I had my reservations about coming out into the civilian world and trying to make my own way, because I didn't really know much about the civilian world from an adult perspective. My adult years were in the service, and I had a captain. The captain of our troop was he was like, "You should come and be my 50 cal gunner. You should sign on for a year and just come be my 50 cal gunner." And at the time, it's because I'd hit 9 out of 10 targets at the 50 cal range, and that was the first time I'd ever did that. And I guess he thought I was hot shit or something, so he wanted me to come be his gunner. And I had a few soldiers that were like, "Come on, man, stay, extend for a year." There was a deployment to, was it Romania or Poland? It was somewhere in Europe. They were going on deployment there. And once I had heard about that, I was like, hell no, I'm not going over there to Europe in the cold. I don't do cold well. I'll do the desert. I'll do all that. But no to the cold.
Oh man! And look, we're going into Eastern Europe now anyway, so good job.
Yeah, really.
See,
I was like, yeah,
see how it
better
all
start
works
getting
out.
used to the cold.
But did you know what you wanted to do when you were getting out? Did you have any idea?
I did not. At the time, all I wanted to do was like, man, I wanted to find a little bit of peace somewhere. Like I wanted to find a job that gave me some peace, some some value at the end of the day. Work hard. I wanted to find just be normal. Just be normal. Not necessarily put the military behind me, but start taking advantage of the time I got left and try and normalize life as much as I can and just be a normal guy.
What's the one thing you missed the most about the military?
One thing I miss the most about the military, it's kind of cliche, but it's definitely the camaraderie. When I went in, my expectation was that it was going to be a cold, dark world in the military, and you were not going to get close to anybody and all this and that. And it was the exact opposite, because everybody was there for the same reason. Everybody wanted to serve their country. Everybody wanted to give it their all. Everybody loved the United States and believed in what we were doing. And it was a beautiful thing. And I don't think that's something, there was little pieces of it you could replicate with sports, but no offense to them, when you deploy and you go through those emotions with that guy and see their life change in a year, you go through all the ups and downs, man, all the highs and lows of their life. Stuff happening to people. Had a few friends get hit with EFPs. Luckily, they were duds. I mean, you just got to deal with stuff in life through them. And it just brings you so much closer together. And when you get out, that is probably the biggest thing you're going to miss is those guys that you spent that time with.
What's the one trait or the one thing that you learned in the military that you still use to this day? Taking
the initiative. That is one thing that I learned. I wasn't a guy that took the initiative when, before I went into the Army. But the Army had taught me, when you take the initiative, chances are you're going to have odds in your favor. So take the initiative, get that head start, get there early, get there, whatever the case may be. Take the initiative always.
And so what are you doing with yourself now?
I work in lawn care. I make the majority of my money during the summer. This is the slow season right now.
Right. Well, I think, again, the idea that you've been able to stand on your own 2 feet after all this experience, and be able to sort of live life on your own terms is, from what I'm hearing, sounds like it's part of the reason why you went in the military to begin with, right? Like it was part of the reason that some of the things that you wanted to get out of it.
Yes, I and like I said, this is all hindsight, but looking back at it now, the Army was probably the reason why I am able to do this right here, because the Army gave me so many tools, and the NCOs that I was with, they just all gave me so many tools. There's so much you can learn. And, you know, I'm sure there are a lot of people that are not veterans. They're like, yeah, you only learn military stuff. No, that's not the case. I mean, these guys, they pull you in, they treat you like sons, they treat you like brothers, whatever. I mean, you get taught finance classes. I mean, you get taught a lot of stuff. And you're going to be able to take this stuff and utilize it, you know, if you can find a way to utilize it correctly and use it the right way. Yeah, you can definitely use these tools to navigate you through life. And the whole reason why I wanted to live simply is because I felt like, all right, I had got my fill. I had done what I came there to do. I deployed, you know, I felt like I got what I needed to get out of it, and I can go on with my life. There was something in me that just said, I wanted to serve my country. I wanted to serve my country, and I wanted to say I served my country. And it would be even cooler if I got to say I served my country in a time of war.
You've been 10 years removed now from your deployment. If you got back together with all those NCOs and everything, what would you say to them now, 10 years later?
Well, in the first 5 minutes, you know, it'd be a lot of joking around, but the first 5 minutes would be all business. And I would pour my heart out to them, and I'd tell them, you guys took me in when I was just naive, young, didn't know how to be a soldier, you know, didn't know how to be a soldier in a real unit. And you guys looked past all that, and you took me in because I wasn't the most perfect soldier. I didn't necessarily get in trouble, but I was a slow learner. And I had some NCOs, thankfully, that had some extreme patience, and they pulled me in. They taught me how to be a scout, taught me how to be a soldier, taught me all the discipline, and kind of let me into the circle. And I can't thank them enough for that. And some of the stuff they taught me not only helped me on deployment and in Iraq and in Kuwait, but also in life. Even today, you know, I lost my father in 2019, and I'm lucky because in a way I had some uncles or big brothers that, you know, I'm still able to bounce stuff off of them, and I'm still able to talk to them because I'm 30 going on 31. You know, I'm still learning how to be a man. I'm about to be a father in July. So I just can't thank them enough. And all the junior guys I served with, E4 Mafia, all those privates, you know, I get privates every now and again that I serve with. One particular messaged me last year, a guy that I was pretty high on, and he said, he sent me a picture of a E4 holding it was these Ninja Turtles, and it was an E4 holding a private and a private first class's hands. And says, we all know that one specialist that is the reason why we're still in the Army. And he sent me that, and he said, this is you, dude. And that made me feel pretty good. It's like, man, I was able to at least, you know, shape and mold one guy, and one guy gave me the credit for that, and that felt great. Yeah. And so now's my time to give the credit to all the NCOs. They kept us alive because it was not easy. It was not easy. They had a lot to do.
That's amazing. And that's great. I mean, honestly, and it's as simple as the old Christian philosophy. Like, you know, even if you save one sheep and the whole flock disperses, right? I mean, you made an impact. And if you've made an impact on one soldier, then you've served enough of your purpose to continue to make the Army a better place, right?
Yeah. Through them, one of the big things that stuck out to me was integrity. Like, integrity was a big thing with my NCOs. And these were guys that, man, they were at some of the highest points in the war on terror. And so for them to, you know, for me to see their human side and to actually hang out with these guys inside of Bradley and sometimes even off work, you know, it was eye-opening, and it made me a better soldier for sure.
Any final words that you'd like to leave those NCOs?
Yes. To all the NCOs that helped me and my battle buddies, and even the drill sergeants and OSUT, you guys did your jobs well. You did your jobs to your fullest extent, and I think you made some great, brave young men. who have went on and done great things. Whatever that future holds for them, they went on and they did it. And I think you guys got a lot to be proud of. And for all the NCOs that have, that were in my unit that went there, did that, and went back for some more 2, 3, 4, 5 times, you guys will never, ever get the recognition that you deserve, ever. I don't think that's possible, what you've given up for this country. And maybe one day, maybe this country will give you the recognition you deserve, but I definitely recognize you, and I'm so thankful for everything you guys have done, because you guys are, in my opinion, you guys are the next great generation.
Perfect words about the NCOs and the NCO Corps and what they've meant, not only to folks in the Army like you and me, but every NCO across all branches. There really is a reason why they are the backbone of what we do. And certainly it's great to have somebody of your rank, of your position, show that sort of respect and admiration for the job that they have done. Because you're right, it's not said enough. It really isn't. A lot of what we all do is fairly thankless, but the way they molded you and the way you were able to mold a young private, speaks to the job and the level of work that they did and how important it is. So I certainly appreciate you sharing those thoughts.
Yes, sir.
Well, again, thank you so much for volunteering to share your story. It is important. It doesn't have to be some thing that's made into a book or a movie or anything like that. Your story
it's not some sexy combat story.
But it doesn't. But that's the thing, brother. Like, it doesn't have to be. I always tell that to people. There are so many people we ask to come on. They're like, I don't really have a great story. I said, that's not the point. Your story and the message you just conveyed is important. And even if your story, was only 12 months in Iraq and Kuwait, it doesn't matter in the big picture of things, because it's part of the big picture. You can't have the whole picture without your story, and certainly not the story of those NCOs that you just wanted to illuminate and bring to light, and share about how much they have done and meant to you and others throughout your lives and their careers. So it's incredibly important. It doesn't have to be sexy, man. It just has to be effective, and I think that's what your story is about, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, Bradley Walker, we appreciate you joining us, and thank you for being part of the Hazard Ground.
All right. Thank you.
You've been listening to Killcliffe's Hazard Ground podcast, hosted by Mark Zeno. If you have an interesting story to tell and you'd like to be on the show, send us an email at producer@hazardground.com. And if you like the show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.